When Emma and I hit our 7th year together, a guy named Noah came into her life. They clicked instantly, chatting about everything and having a great vibe. Every night, Emma would whip up 2 desserts from scratch, one for me and one to take to Noah. Nothing ever crossed the line. Until one evening, Noah asked her, "If I had met you first, would you've married me?" Emma didn't respond. Instead, she smashed the vase I had gifted her. Emma had been scatterbrained all day. She wanted to bring something up multiple times but held back. In the end, I ended up initiating the conversation. "Did something happen?" I asked, noticing her distractedness. Emma frowned slightly and replied cautiously. "Jake's wife is away on a business trip, leaving her home alone and scared. She asked me to keep her company. But your arm is seriously hurt, and I was worried about leaving you by yourself. I thought maybe she should find another girl to hang out with." She spoke sincerely, her tone mixing worry with care. As she talked, I kept staring at her. Her eyes were clear and honest, locking onto mine without a hint of dodging. After a brief pause, she softly asked, "What's up?" I shook my head and said, "Nothing. You can go." "What about you being alone?" she pressed. "I'll ask my mom to come over and take care of me. I had a minor car accident recently and broke my arm." Emma looked terrified. She cried outside the operating room while I was having surgery, whether at the hospital or at home. She took meticulous care of me, wanting to be around 24/7. At night, when my arm hurt too much to sleep, she stayed up, crying by my bedside. Sometimes she gently rubbed my other hand with her cheek. Other times, she wiped the sweat off my forehead with a towel. Seeing her exhaust herself worried me, so I told her to get some rest early. She asked, "How can I sleep when you're like this? What if something happens and I don't find out right away? I'd have nightmares. Your hand is for designing houses. If anything goes wrong, I'd regret it forever." Then she pouted and added, "Don't you want me to stay with you?" During the day, even when she had to work, she waited until my mom arrived, constantly reminding her to take good care of me and going over all the details again and again. It made my mom laugh and cry. "This is my own son. How could I neglect him?" But today, Emma hesitated for just 2 seconds before nodding. "Take care of yourself. I'll be back as soon as possible. Call me first if anything happens. Don't make me worry." She left in a hurry, grabbing only a change of clothes before rushing out. I sat there, frozen. Even though I smiled and waved when she looked back, I didn't move once the door closed. But my stiff back started to relax. Emma had been acting weird from start to finish. Even though she was acting strange, I didn't say another word or ask more questions because I knew where she was headed and who she was meeting. At first, I didn't know the guy's first name. I only knew his last name was Lee, and Emma called him Manager Lee. The first time I saw him was a year ago. I was waiting for Emma at a new cafe near her office. I hadn't told her I was coming, planning to call her around noon, but she walked in unexpectedly. The usually lazy receptionist snapped to attention. Emma greeted him with a bright smile. He nodded back with a grin, a silent understanding passing between them. I always thought the connection between a man and a woman could be creepy, making both think they were meant to be. But back then, that weird feeling just flickered through my mind, and I didn't think much of it. Later, when Emma saw me, she was really surprised. She asked why I was there. "Waiting to have lunch with you," I replied. "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to interrupt your work," I said. "Why did you come down?" She pouted and said, "Work stuff, a bit annoying, so I came down for a walk and a coffee to refresh. By the way, the cookies here are amazing. You should try them," she added, raising her hand to introduce him. "This is Manager Lee." She handed him another plate of cookies, smiling as she introduced him to his puzzled look. That day, they were both super chill. Emma introduced him smoothly. Lee greeted me calmly and even waived our bill. Emma mentioned that the coffee here was legit. After trying it once and loving it, her company decided to get their afternoon tea from this place. Over time, they grew closer. I thought they were just a simple customer and shopkeeper. I didn't know those awesome cookies weren't even sold in their store. I also didn't realize that Lee would message Emma asking, "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" Emma texted me at 10 p.m. saying she'd just had hot pot with Lily and was about to rest. She was so tired she couldn't video call me that night and asked me to take care of myself and call her if anything happened. I replied, telling her not to worry and that I was fine. I asked the cafe server, "Where's Manager Lee? Why isn't he here?" The young girl, not thinking much, smiled and said, "He went out, left as soon as he went downstairs. Today's our boss's birthday. He must be on a date with his girlfriend, carrying a big bouquet of roses. So romantic." I nodded, grabbed a coffee to go, and left. This city's huge. Finding two people is tough. But Emma once bought me a smartwatch. I had slipped it into her handbag before she left. She got it for me last year when others were tying small rubber bands on their loved ones' hands. "This way, I can always know where you are. I want to check on you." "Will you let me?" she said coyly. But I knew she was more into the health monitoring than tracking my location. I had fainted from overwork once, and she was scared to death. She wanted to monitor my condition in real time. Naturally, I appreciated her concern. That smartwatch was pricey, accurately tracking my heart rate and location. Just like now, it had been on the 12th floor of this hotel for 3 hours. I didn't rush over immediately. My arm hurt a bit, so I took a painkiller and some melatonin, lying on the soft bed, listening to white noise to sleep. But even so, I couldn't drift off, just like that night over a month ago. The first time I checked Emma's phone. She seemed really upset, cutting her hand while peeling an apple for me, spilling a glass of water while pouring it. Her emotions seemed to collapse in an instant, hysterically sweeping everything off the table, including the vase I had custom made for our wedding anniversary. Looking at the mess, I stayed silent. Emma finally calmed down, regret showing in her eyes as she looked at the broken vase. She turned to me, seeming like she wanted to say something, but ended up not saying a word and quietly started cleaning up. Later, I woke up in the middle of the night to find her wasn't there. The dim light in the living room was on. Emma had drunk several glasses of red wine, her body slumped on the sofa, long hair draped over the edge, her face streaked with tears, soaking the cushion she was lying on. At that moment, my heart felt slow and heavy, like it was dying. I unlocked her phone. The chat window was still open. That guy, only marked as Lee, had sent a message in the afternoon. "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" Emma didn't reply, not a single word. But that night, my heart died in her phone. I arrived at the hotel at 6 a.m. with my ID and placed all my stuff at the front desk. "Emma is my wife, and I need to know which room she booked. If you refuse, I'll call the cops." I didn't have the energy to argue. I was drained, both physically and mentally. The receptionist was stunned for a long time, her expression shifting from surprise to hesitation, then to pity. "Please wait a moment. I'll check for you right away." She quickly gave me the room number and asked if I needed any help. I smiled and shook my head, gathering my things and heading upstairs. Emma didn't keep me waiting long. I had been standing outside the door for less than 40 minutes when it opened. Lee stood there holding the doorknob, looking downcast. Behind him, a slender hand rested on his arm. A voice came through. "Lee, thank you, but I'm sorry. We really can't do this." "Thank you." "Thank you? For what?" "Sorry." "What are you sorry for?" It felt like a secret code between them. Sadness clouded Lee's face. Emma stepped back, her hand recoiling from his arm as if burnt, but she didn't come out from behind Lee. I asked, "Aren't you leaving?" "Alex." Emma's face was pale, her voice shaky. So was mine. The hand I had behind my back was trembling. I thought I was ready and could handle this calmly, but when the moment came, I barely stood. It felt like all my strength vanished instantly. Weakly, I asked, "Where's the car?" "In the underground parking lot." "Let's go." My arm, in a sling, accidentally hit the wall. The pain made me gasp. "Alex." Emma hurried to support me. "Don't touch me. I growled, but she kept her head down, stubbornly ignoring me. I raised my hand to push her away. Suddenly, Lee stepped forward, pulling Emma behind him. "What are you going to do?" I sneered. "Do what? What do you think I'm going to do? Hit her?" He stood tall, like a knight in shining armor, in front of Emma and told me, "I won't let you touch her." I nodded. "Fine, then keep her. Just remind her to divorce me first." Emma shook off Lee's hand and shouted, "Alex, let's go home." Lee, hurt, said, "I'm trying to help you." Emma took a step back. "Lee, I have nothing to do with you. I don't need your help." She didn't even glance at Lee, only looked at me. And then, she spoke again. "Alex, let's go home." "Alex, I can explain. Yesterday was Lee's birthday. He doesn't have friends here, so he wanted me to keep him company. I just spent his birthday with him. Nothing happened between us. It was wrong of me to lie to you. I apologize. I was just scared you'd be mad and overthink things. I was wrong. If it bothers you, I won't see him again. He's just a friend." "Alex, please don't ignore me. Say something." "Okay, don't scare me." Since we got home, Emma had been saying a lot, explanations, apologies, self-blame. I wanted to speak, but it felt like my throat was stuffed with cotton. I couldn't get a single word out. I didn't know where to start or what to say. Finally, I said, word by word, "Emma, let's get a divorce." My words made Emma tremble violently. She grabbed the hem of her clothes and tightly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, it seemed like she was holding back her overwhelming emotions. Nothing happened between us. We just drank and chatted. "Alex, don't be like this." "Okay, I know you're angry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have gone out with him. But you have to believe me. I didn't do anything to betray you." "What does it mean to betray me?" I said calmly. "You probably hugged him, right? Maybe even kissed. You smell like smoke. And here." I pointed at her lips, noticing a bite mark. Emma was stunned, her lips tightening. I looked at her with sadness. "How far does it have to go? Caught in bed, you were in the same room all night. How can you expect me to believe you? Emma, how can I trust you?" Her head drooped in defeat. She closed her eyes, her eyelashes trembling gently. Her voice choked as she said, "Alex, I was wrong. I don't know what happened to me. I lost my mind, but I swear, nothing more happened between us. I beg you, for the sake of our years together, give me another chance. Besides, I'm pregnant." She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. I froze, slowly looking down. Confusion washed over me. A moment of confusion. I suddenly pulled my hand back. "What did you say?" "I'm pregnant." "When did you find out?" Emma fell silent, her hand clenching into a small, bloodless fist. I gritted my teeth, feeling like a trapped beast. My voice was hoarse and trembling as I asked, "You knew but didn't tell me? You knew and still spent the night with Lee? What are you thinking? You don't want this baby, do you? Because of Lee, right? You bitch! How dare you? Thinking? You don't want this baby, do you? Because of Lee. Right. You bitch! How dare you use this baby as a bargaining chip now? Divorce Emma. Don't say another word." This year marked our 7th year together. People often joked about the 7-year itch. I laughed, thinking, we've only been married for 3 years, but together for 7 already. Maybe it's time to have a baby. But honestly, we never used contraception from the start. For a while, Emma was really anxious about it. She couldn't understand why she couldn't get pregnant. We went to the hospital for various tests. The results showed our chances of having children were low. My health was all normal. The problem was with her. To prevent Emma from feeling down, whenever people asked why we didn't have kids, I'd say, "I haven't had enough of the two of us yet. No one can take Emma away from me." We both looked forward to having a child. I used to imagine that if one day we found out Emma was pregnant, we'd be over the moon. But she didn't tell me. She got pregnant, had a checkup, but didn't inform me. I didn't need to think deeply. I knew she hesitated about whether to keep the baby. Why? Because of Lee's presence. Another man made her unsure if she wanted to have a child with me. How ridiculous. How pathetic. Strong emotions surged through my nerves, wave after wave. Finally, I vomited. I clung to the toilet, kneeling on the floor. It was a pain that felt like my organs had shifted. Emma pounded on the door desperately, begging me to open it, to come out. She pleaded softly outside, asking me not to joke about my health. I sat there, disheveled, feeling like the biggest failure in the world. I wanted to end it all with dignity, but my dignity was crushed the moment Emma started to waver. That night, I slept in the guest room. Maybe I was too tired. I fell asleep quickly. Early the next morning, before I woke up, Emma had prepared a full breakfast. When I came out, she stood up with a forced smile. She probably didn't sleep well. She looked awful, her lips colorless. In the past, I would have felt heartbroken, but now my heart felt like a pool of dead water. "Alex, eat something," I said expressionlessly. "Emma, let's talk." She stood there for a long time, then finally nodded. "Okay, where should I start?" I told Emma I gave you a chance. I even imagined things might not have to go this far. Emma was stunned, looking at me with some confusion. I sneered. "That day, Lee asked you, if you had met me first, would you have married me? Because of that one sentence, you broke down and cried hysterically. When you passed out drunk on the sofa that night, I had already checked your phone. I always thought snooping through a partner's phone wasn't cool. Once you start, the distance is already there. If there's no trust, why stay together?" But with that mindset, I still ended up doing it. My words made Emma freeze. Her body leaned back slightly, trying to escape. She grabbed the hem of her clothes, pleading with her weak voice, barely audible. But I didn't respond. I rubbed my sore eyes and said, "Yes, you didn't reply, but not replying is also an answer." The suffocating silence filled the room again. Emma opened her mouth several times to speak. Finally, she said, "If you saw those messages, you should understand that I never crossed any line with him before. I just saw him as a friend. The night before last, I drank too much and messed up my emotions. But it stopped there. It didn't go any further. Alex, I really didn't betray you." I didn't look at Emma. I just exhaled deeply. On April 3rd, we had planned to go to the movies. It had been a long time since we last went. I bought the tickets, reserved a restaurant, and was really looking forward to it. But she suddenly said she didn't have time because her boss made her work overtime. In reality, it was Lee who asked her to go singing. Every night she made 2 desserts at home, one for me in the evening and one for him in the morning. The only exception was on Valentine's Day when she took matcha chocolates, 13 pieces. The elevator in her building required an internal card. Lee complained it took too long to wait every time he delivered food. So she told her boss that her husband needed a card to pick her up when she worked late, but she actually gave it to him on her birthday. After I fell asleep, she went downstairs at midnight, and Lee gave her a bracelet. He asked if he was the first to wish her a happy birthday, and she said yes. Their unspoken understanding was, he says go, and she says go. When she mentioned a penthouse, he responded with a 1. She said she was sleepy, and he said the coffee was on the way. When she switched cars, she took him for a test drive. He said someone mistook them for a couple, and she sent a shy facepalm emoji. Every day on her way home from work, she chatted with him for 27 minutes. How long had it been since we talked that much in one day? Except during our honeymoon phase. The Emma who chatted with Lee was a stranger to me. No, I shouldn't say stranger. The Emma from university was like that. Lively, talkative, even a bit childish. But the person on the other end was no longer me. That feeling of ants gnawing at my skin almost consumed me. Emma's head hung lower and lower. She said weakly, "I just saw him as a confidant. When I was feeling down, I'd occasionally want to chat with someone. We were just chatting. Alex, what will it take for you to believe me?" A deep sense of powerlessness pulled me down. Emma, how far does it have to go to be considered cheating? Your closeness, your understanding, it's like a guillotine hanging over my head. Is it cheating when the blade falls? Or when you hang it above me? The bullet was already in the chamber before the trigger was pulled. I had fantasies. I love Emma. We've been together for 7 years. I remember every bit of what she did for me. How could she betray me for someone like that? But when I turned off my phone and lay down, I knew some things couldn't be ignored. After seeing those messages and discovering everything, how could I still trust her? When she leaves my sight and does something odd, I knew she was going to see him. At that moment, I realized our relationship was already dead. Until Emma agreed to see Lee one last time, to drink with him one last time. Maybe this way I can let go. Emma pleaded, "Please have pity on me." She replied, "Okay." At that moment, the trigger was pulled. I felt reborn through death. "Emma, let's get a divorce." Emma disagreed. She said she was willing to compromise on anything except divorce. She promised to always make desserts just for me, have lunch downstairs at my company, come home on time every day, and never step into the cafe again. Watching her busy and eager to please made me very sad. This was all unnecessary. I never liked compensations after the fact. Divorce is tough. I only realized how hard it is when I wanted to get divorced. When one party disagrees, you have to file a lawsuit. From filing to trial takes at least a month. If there's no major fault, the first trial won't grant the divorce. Then you have to wait 6 months and file again. Will it be granted the second time? Maybe. It's torturous. So I decided to move out. "What are you doing? Where are you going?" I ignored Emma's words and continued packing my clothes into the suitcase. She went crazy, throwing my things around. "What more do you want from me? I've already admitted my mistakes, apologized, and promised there won't be a next time. What more do you want from me? I've already admitted my mistakes, apologized, and promised there won't be a next time. Why are you still unforgiving? Am I so unforgivable? Can't you give me just one chance for the sake of our years together? Alex, I'm begging you. Can't we be okay?" The cloves in my hand wrinkled from my grip. I threw them hard on the floor. "Emma, I'm begging you too. Stop disgusting me." Emma was scared, stepping back with red-rimmed eyes. She clutched her stomach and held onto the doorframe. "I won't divorce you. I'm pregnant. You can't divorce me." That was the last thing she said before she fainted, threatening a miscarriage. If her symptoms worsened, it could lead to a miscarriage. The doctor diagnosed it as emotional upheaval and excessive worry. Her parents rushed over, scolding me harshly, questioning how I was taking care of Emma, asking if I was bullying her or causing her stress. I was too tired, too exhausted to even speak. Emma looked at them nervously and said, "Dad, Mom, stop it." I slowly raised my head, looking at the three of them in front of me. "I want a divorce from Emma." "What did you say?" "I want a divorce from Emma, you bastard." Her dad got angry and swung a punch at my face, but I grabbed his arm tightly. Emma screamed, trying to intervene, but her mom held her back. "You've spoiled him too much. She's pregnant and he wants a divorce." "Does he have someone else outside?" Emma stood still. I sneered. "Emma, this marriage is over." Because of the commotion, everyone knew about my desire to divorce Emma. At first, my parents didn't understand until I told them the real reason. Suddenly, they all fell silent. Emma's parents didn't come looking for me either. They must have learned the truth. Only Emma persisted. During her hospital stay, she called me many times, but I didn't answer any of them. She then called my parents. At first, their tone wasn't good, but as Emma showed weakness and repeatedly mentioned the baby, my parents wavered. Maybe let it go. After all, Emma is pregnant. Yes, Emma is pregnant. Everyone thinks this should be a get-out-of-jail-free card, but in reality, it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. I loved her so much, eagerly looking forward to our child's arrival. But what about her? She stabbed me in the back. bleeding profusely, deep enough to see the bone. The feeling of being betrayed by someone you love torments me every second. I hate her. I no longer trust her. How can I spend the rest of my life with her? Do I have to wait until the marriage rots to the core to end it? Emma stayed in the hospital for 15 days. Lee visited once, bringing a fruit basket and flowers, saying he was there to check on her. But for the first time, Emma looked at him coldly. Leave. Don't come back. Lee was silent for a few seconds, then forced a smile and asked, "What do you mean?" "You're not answering my calls or messages." "What? We can't even be friends anymore. Does Mr. Wong still have a misunderstanding? I can go explain to him." I... Emma interrupted him. "Let's not contact each other anymore." I wouldn't have known this, but Lee came to tell me himself. He smoked, his face full of despair. I thought I could win her over. "You just showed up a bit earlier than me. But now, I've lost. I give up. She's yours." His self-pity made me laugh. "Did Emma send you?" Lee smirked. "Her last request to me. Of course, I'll fulfill it. Really, a deep love without regret." I called Emma. As soon as she picked up, she said, "Alex, I can be discharged soon. You'll come to pick me up, right?" I said, "Abort it." "What? The baby?" Emma cried, sobbing uncontrollably. "Do you hate me so much that you want to kill our child?" "Emma," I spoke calmly, "if you have this child, and someday they ask why their parents divorced, what will you tell them? Yes, whether it's during her pregnancy or breastfeeding, I can't divorce her even if I file a lawsuit. But these periods will pass, and I will definitely divorce her." Emma choked out, "Why? I've already apologized to you. I've humbled myself, begged you in tears. What more do you want? Just for making one mistake, do I deserve a death sentence? Can't you give me one chance?" "Alex, is your heart made of stone?" This was the first time she decisively hung up on me. She said, "I won't abort the baby, and I won't divorce you." Emma was discharged from the hospital and went home but didn't contact me. However, her mother called me repeatedly. At first, her tone was kind, then she became angry and ashamed. "Alex, you're a man. Can't you be a bit more forgiving? Emma just had a male friend. Nothing actually happened. Do you really have to be so unforgiving? How ugly." I had already prepared for worse, but then came the news that Emma's mother was hospitalized. "What happened?" I asked a friend. He shook his head. "Not sure. Seems she had a fight with Emma's dad. No one knows the exact reason. How is she now?" "She's awake but crying and screaming, saying she wants to die." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Glad she's awake." My mom asked, "Aren't you going to visit?" I was busy with work and didn't check. No. Since I decided to part ways, there was no point in giving false hope. It's strange how people can change overnight. At first, I thought Emma's betrayal would make me want to die, that I'd be in unbearable pain. But as days passed, it didn't hurt as much. I started to face the reality that my marriage had failed. I didn't plan to visit Emma's mother, but she called me saying she wanted to see me. Her voice was sad and hoarse, making me hesitate for a long time. But in the end, I went. In just a few days, Emma's mother looked visibly haggard, and Emma, too, had lost a lot of weight, looking like she might collapse at any moment, lost, helpless, in pain. She said, "Alex, thank you for coming to see my mom." I nodded and walked into the hospital room. Emma's father was cheating. More accurately, he found true love and wanted a divorce. His so-called true love was 2 years younger than Emma. He said he had never felt so in sync with anyone before. They ate together, fished together, traveled together, and had endless conversations. He said he felt alive again. He said he sacrificed his whole life for this family. So why can't he live for himself just once? Emma's mother became more agitated as she spoke. He said he only feels responsible towards me and this family. It's me and this family that have held him back. How dare he? Hasn't he ever thought about my sacrifices? How can he negate all our years together with just a few words? He's cheating. And yet, he tries to make it sound so noble. I won't let them be together. I'd rather die than let them be together. If he wants to divorce me and be with his new lover, no way. Emma's mother grabbed my hand, trembling. Alex, you understand me, right? You get what I'm going through, don't you? Only you know what I've been through. He's driving me to death. With her words, I finally understood why she wanted to see me and tell me all this. It turns out you really can't understand the pain until it happens to you. Before, she casually brushed off Emma's mistake, saying it was just a minor conflict, and blamed me for being petty. But now, when it's happening to her, she says it's driving her to death. I didn't offer comfort or kick her when she was down. After she finished speaking, I pushed her hand away. Facing her hopeful gaze, I said flatly, "Rest well. I have things to do, so I'll be leaving now." When I stepped out of the hospital room, Emma was standing outside. She looked at me with longing in her eyes. "Can we talk?" "Talk? Talk about what? Even with the divorce, I just wanted to resolve it, not talk about it." "I have 2 questions for you. First, if your dad hadn't mentioned divorce but had a close female friend, would you empathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Second, your dad's close relationship with this woman didn't just start yesterday. Why did he bring up divorce now?" After saying this, ignoring Emma's barely controlled emotions, I walked away. Emma's father was determined. He was willing to leave with nothing just to get divorced. This shocked everyone. For a long time, a loving family and a good background were Emma's labels. She had never faced hardships from her family. Her father was someone she admired and depended on. She always said she wanted to marry someone like her father. Her mother, gentle and calm, was someone Emma aspired to be. After graduating, she used her family's connections to enter a company and is now a mid-level manager. So, Emma hadn't faced many social hardships. The only real turmoil was probably our divorce. I understood Emma. She knew she was wrong, but didn't think she was that wrong. She chose to admit her mistake, thinking that just admitting it would be enough. What's the big deal? But her father's situation seemed to wake her up suddenly. She hadn't contacted me for many days, but she often appeared outside our neighborhood. Her car would be parked there for hours, until one day she called out to me. We sat on a bench by the road. After a long silence, Emma spoke. "I've thought a lot about the questions you asked me." Later, I asked her why she wanted a divorce now. She said it was because her mom's attitude made her feel that having a close female friend was acceptable. She also thought I could understand her falling for someone else and wouldn't blame her because I did the same. "Since that's the case, I thought we wouldn't mind if I asked for a divorce." As Emma said this, her hands trembled. So did her voice. "I went to see that girl, trying to persuade her to break up with my dad. But she said, 'Don't you have a close male friend too? You didn't even want to have a baby because of him. The only difference is you weren't brave enough. In that regard, you should learn from your dad.' How could he do that? They were in love all this time. And the day before he asked for a divorce, he hugged my mom before leaving." Emma buried her face in her hands and cried. She cried for her father's betrayal of their marriage and family, but her tears didn't stir any pity in me. "Alex, do you hate me that much?" My hand on the bench tightened, and a thorn pricked my finger, causing pain. I recalled those unpleasant experiences. At first, I was sad. Discovering you had such a close male friend, I was very sad. Later, when he confessed and you didn't respond, I was confused. I thought, at least you hadn't betrayed me. Right. But you didn't cut ties. You continued to do those things, which made me suffer. Until you agreed to meet him that night, I suddenly felt relieved. They say the person involved is often the last to see it. You didn't respond to his confession, not because you didn't want to, but because you couldn't. So you broke down, felt miserable, and cried. Even knowing he had feelings for you, you didn't keep your distance because you couldn't let go. You agreed to drink with him because you had other thoughts. What stopped you? Probably your last shred of moral decency. Emma, when I realized you liked him, I hated you. Emma looked at me with pain in her eyes, but I felt a sense of relief. But all that's in the past. Hatred is too intense. It hurts others and yourself. It's unnecessary. Emma, if you really feel sorry for me, then decisively agree to the divorce and leave us both some dignity. At the end of our conversation, Emma wiped away her tears. Do you have time tomorrow? Accompany me for the abortion. Just consider it the last time you'll be with me. Emma and I divorced on a sunny morning. She asked, "Can we still be friends after the divorce?" I shook my head. Let's not. We both need to start over. Emma wanted to smile, but in the end, she cried. Alex, I'm sorry. I accepted those 3 words calmly. I turned and left without looking back. Emma's parents were still causing a scene. I heard her father had already set up a home elsewhere. Her mother argued and cursed every day, but it couldn't change her father's determination. So she started blaming Emma, creating one dramatic scene after another. I didn't need to see it myself. Countless people were affected. At first, I still ran into Emma occasionally, but less and less over time because her mother's antics affected both her father's career and her own job to varying degrees. Some people sighed, some ridiculed, some watched the drama unfold. Even my mom couldn't help but say, "It's a good thing you got out of that mess early, or we would have been affected too. What's wrong with that family?" I said nothing to that. Later, I ran into Lee once. He had a new relationship. He apologized to me, talking about his foolish past and how he's moved on now. His face was full of relief, as if he wanted to laugh off our grudges. It felt ridiculous to me. Are you really apologizing, or just seeking some psychological comfort? Mr. Lee, I have no obligation to make you feel better because you truly destroyed my marriage and family. This guilt is yours to bear. All I needed to do was cut away the dead weight and move on. I have my work and my family. A failed marriage could only hurt me for a while, but would never make me suffer for life. The key was to move on in time. Emma's perspective. The first time Emma met Lee was shortly after his cafe opened. To deliver food on time, he asked Emma to let him use the company's internal elevator. Emma agreed. Later, she wondered if she would have agreed if it were anyone else. Probably not, because Lee caught her eye. One glance, and she couldn't forget him. The second time they met, Lee thanked her by buying her a cup of coffee. So Emma told her boss to get an extra card for her husband. He gave her a special cookie he made with a secret recipe. This back and forth led Emma and Lee to become familiar with each other. Her company's afternoon tea orders went to Lee. She exchanged contact information with him. Once she went hiking and ran into Lee, who also enjoyed it. Emma felt a long-lost sense of ease. Lee suggested, "Shall we hike together from now on?" Emma smiled but didn't agree. She felt it wasn't right. But eventually, she agreed, because they met again at a concert. A concert Alex was supposed to attend with her, but he canceled for work. Emma didn't say it, but she was disappointed. Lee's presence filled that disappointment. They found they had so many similar interests. Such compatibility fascinated Emma. In casual conversation, she mentioned she made desserts for Alex every day. Lee was envious. "If a woman made me desserts every day, I'd love her to death." Emma's heart raced. "Shall I make some for you?" "Really? Of course." Emma thought it was harmless, just making one more portion. So later on Valentine's Day, Lee said, "Being single for so long, I can't stand the smell of love." An employee named Xiao Li received 13 pieces of matcha chocolate today. "I'm so jealous. It makes me want to fall in love without thinking." Emma responded, "Do you have to be in love to receive chocolates? I'll give you some." Emma didn't think deeply at that moment. Was she hoping Lee wouldn't fall in love? Did Emma like Lee? She probably did, but whether this liking was related to love? Emma hadn't thought about it, but she knew Lee's liking was related to love. How could she not know? Women are most sensitive about these things, but she didn't want Lee to say it. She couldn't give Lee what he wanted and didn't want to. She had a happy family and a loving husband. To her, Lee could only be a friend. But Lee still confessed in the end. This pained Emma immensely, so much so that she didn't want to see Alex, as if Alex's existence was an obstacle. Emma didn't respond to Lee. Lee pretended he hadn't asked. They continued their previous interactions, but that there were differences, like Lee's increasingly intimate gestures. For instance, Emma's hesitation about having the baby. Emma was pregnant. Half a month after Lee asked that question, she should have been happy. She should have told Alex immediately, but she didn't. She sat in the car for an hour, tore up the diagnosis, and went to meet Lee for karaoke. Emma was confused, thinking and thinking. The baby, Alex, Lee. She needed to think it over. That night, she lost control. They hugged and kissed. Lee unbuttoned her clothes. Just short of the final step, control slipped away. They hugged and kissed. Lee unbuttoned her clothes just short of the final step. Emma pushed him away. "No," she said. "Not now. I haven't decided yet. I'm married. I'm pregnant." She needed more time, but didn't know she was out of time because Alex found out when Emma opened the door and saw him. At first, Emma didn't think it was serious or deliberately deceived herself. She just made a friend she got along with well. She didn't cheat, didn't betray Alex. Alex could be angry, upset, she would apologize. But that was it. Divorce. That was too much. Since Alex found out, Emma's emotions were tight, constantly jumping between guilt and irritation. When Alex was sad and hurt, she felt guilty. But when he kept mentioning divorce, she got irritated. She just made a mistake. A mistake not serious enough to be unforgivable. Why couldn't he forgive her once? Emma didn't understand, until her dad asked for a divorce. During that time, Emma was in a bad mood. Her mom would complain along with her, saying Alex was immature, unforgiving. It wasn't a big deal, but her mom would complain along with her, saying Alex was immature, unforgiving. It wasn't a big deal, but he made it seem like the sky was falling. Life isn't a novel or a fantasy. It can't always be perfect. Every family has its problems. No one is completely clean. To get through life, sometimes you have to turn a blind eye. This was said at the dinner table. Her dad thought for a moment and said, "So you think this isn't a big deal?" Her mom didn't find it strange, just said indifferently, "Of course not. What's the big deal? That's how the world is now. That's how the world is now." So her dad said, "I fell in love with someone else. Let's divorce. I'll leave with nothing." Her dad had been with that girl for 2 years. Had to call her a girl, after all. She was 2 years younger than Emma. Her dad said it was the first time he liked someone this much. "I've sacrificed so much for family and career. Can't I live for myself once?" Listening to her dad talk about his relationship with that girl, Emma felt slapped in the face. How similar. Her dad and that girl, she and Lee, how similar. She felt stripped naked in public, humiliated, pained, ashamed. But she couldn't run away because her mom fainted. If your dad hadn't mentioned divorce but had a close female friend, would you empathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Your dad's relationship with this woman didn't start yesterday. Why did he mention divorce now? Alex's 2 questions were a wake-up call. Emma finally understood. You only feel the pain when the knife is in your own flesh. What made her decide on divorce was her mom's hysterical outburst. "You're just like your dad. The same excuses for cheating. Disgusting." "Alex, can you stop disgusting me?" He said, "At least your dad admits he fell for someone else. You don't even dare admit it. Emma, you're worse than your dad." Emma trembled, crying bitterly. "No, it's not like that." But didn't she hate her dad? She did. She didn't understand. She didn't even want to speak to him. She thought, does Alex hate me like that too? Emma got scared. From that moment, she finally began to regret.